Hey everybody, it's Mary Lou Tyler, and I am very proud to present this last part 4 of Webinar with Ambition. And Jeremy is our host. He'll pop in and chime in as he sees things that are relevant that he wants to make sure that you take note of. Today's webinar is part 4, and it's all about how to retain and enhance the current SDR talent. So let me get, there we go. So for those of you who are just joining us for part 4, I'm Mary Lou Tyler. I have worked in this industry in various capacities, but always in lead generation for the last around 28 to 30 years, and specializing in top of funnel, specializing in starting conversations with people we don't know, or following up on conversations that were started via the inbound channel, with the pure goal of getting these folks who are in our funnel over to a qualified opportunity. As I mentioned, we are part 4 today of a 4-part series on mostly SDR, the people side of the equation. If you think about top of funnel and what I do, I leverage people, process, and technology. And we're focusing on today the people side. We did a little bit on process. We did a little bit on the technology. And if you want to go review those webinars, they're all available off the blog on Ambition's website. And I think Jeremy's got pretty much set up so that you can click through to all. So today's webinar is all about retaining and enhancing really a winning SDR team through the process of collaboration, looking at accountability. We're also going to talk about engagement, this concept of conscientiousness, which we explored together, I think, in the second webinar. And then, of course, that all leading to effectiveness. So what I've done is I actually used for this presentation the 5 tenets that Ambition uses in talking about its product offering, starting with transparency and working our way all the way through the development of an effective sales team, in this case, the SDRs top of funnel. So we're going to talk about transparency. We'll move on to mutual accountability, recognition, motivation, and then finally, development. Principle number 1 is transparency. And a lot of times people ask me, what does that really look like? And in any organization, whether it's a sales organization, marketing, or product development, or even engineering, it's the absence of hidden agendas or conditions. It's full disclosure. Everyone is available, made available the full information that flow. There is no hiding of any type of information or presenting information in a way other than what's authentic and true. We see a number of collaborative efforts and a spirit of collaboration throughout. There is a natural cooperation. I look for that, especially going into sales organizations. If I see a lot of what I call silos, or basically people who are hoarding their work products so that people in the group don't learn from that and get better, it's a big red flag for me that it's going to be difficult to instill a sense of collaboration and cooperation amongst the sales executives that I work with. There's also collective decision making. What that means is the SDR teams are involved in policies, procedures. They set workflows. They collaborate on, the daily day in the life of an SDR, and are very active in setting what that flow and rhythm looks like. The outcome of transparency is building a very strong trust within the team. So you know that your team member is watching your back. This is very important in order to be able to achieve those stretch goals, and even to get to the good, better, best kind of goal setting. If we're not a team, it's more difficult than if we are. So for managers who are out there, the more transparent you are, then the more your team will trust you. So transparency really and trust, there are 3 components. The first one is that you care for each other, and care can be that you have a good respect for one another, that you understand, that you're going to be having this job. There's a security aspect to it. And the pay is something that is good for you. I mean, you can live comfortably. You maybe not getting all the toys you want, but you're definitely able to pay for care and feeding, the basics. That's really important in order to have a good team that's not worried about how they're going to make their mortgage or their rent or buy food or whatever it is that they're trying to do. So that's a big component, is getting those needs met. The second is integrity. There's no hidden agendas, no manipulation. And I think we've all been there, especially if you've been in sales before. You might have had exposure to organizations where there was a lot of manipulation and there were hidden agendas. And it just doesn't feel good to be able to go to work every day not feeling good about where you are and the people around you. And of course, the last is competence, meaning that, as a manager especially, that everything that your SDRs are expected to know. They're going to come to you for assistance. They're going to come to you for problem solving. And you should be there for them by either having walked the walk, or if you don't know what it is that they're asking, then making sure that you find out the answer, you discuss it with them, and then move on. So if you look at the reporting tools, and I think Ambition especially has a nice diagram on their website about this, but to be able to report transparency, you really have to look at it across the enterprise. So I've given you some ideas here of how I would look at, from a reporting standpoint, transparency amongst the activities that the SDRs are doing, the objectives that you're setting out, any insights, anything we glean from the conversations that they're having, what trends there are. So that would be sort of the high level. And then it'd be awesome to break it down by groups. So not only are the SDRs on there, but maybe the AEs are on there, the account executives, account managers. If you have more than one sales role, like an inbound person, an outbound person, they're all showing up on this report, as well as the executives, directors, managers, supervisors. In a full transparent environment, you're going to have all of these roles available to see at a glance how everybody is contributing to the goal. The next thing we like to look at is by type. So meaning it's an individual, it's a team, it's a region, and then the enterprise as a whole. And lastly, by touch point. And what I mean by that is who's touching the customer, so that you can really look at the life cycle of the customer touch points and look at leading and lagging indicators. That is exactly the tool that I would use for a transparent sales environment, sales and marketing and corporate, just enterprise-wide. So when I see these types of tools and reporting tools in an organization, then you know that there's probably some tweaking you need to do with process and a little bit on the technology side to achieve the goals, because they've got the people side figured out. Principle number 2 is mutual accountability. Now, if you practice mutual accountability, you are a person, or if you're a manager, you invite critique from your troops. If you're an SDR, you invite critique from your peers. You practice reciprocity. That's the giving back. So if someone does something for you, you do something for them. It's a very natural thing to want to do. You also have boundaries that you set, meaning that there are certain activities that you want to make sure that your troops achieve, or that you achieve as an individual. There are some objectives you probably set out to accomplish. And of course, you're really starting to think about goals. And, this is one area that even my kids, they don't learn this in school, how to set goals. And so being accountable for goals is one of the ways that you're going to achieve those stretch goals that you set out for yourself. If you don't write them down, or if you don't communicate them and socialize them through your organization, making them public, as it were, then you're not as likely to achieve goals. And there's been a lot of research on that. So that's an accountability process and setup that is really good. The next thing is looking at KPIs, as we talked, leading and lagging indicators. Now, some of you may not know what that means, but when you work with your team, there are some things that lead up to establishing a goal and meeting a goal, and there are some things that are after the goal. So that's the leading and the lagging. And we usually look at that via balanced scorecards. That's one of the reporting tools that we can use to measure how well we're achieving our goals or how well we are relative to goals. So if you're looking at things on a daily basis, you're probably looking at things relative to goal. And then after the fact, you're looking at, did we make our numbers? Did we meet our goals and objectives that we've set out for ourselves? This is an example of some of the things to think about when you're setting up KPIs, which are key performance indicators. It starts with describing your intended results. It's understanding what measures alternatively you can use in order to achieve the intended results. Then you're looking at the right measurements. And we talked about this in an earlier webinar about what I call vanity metrics versus actionable metrics. So you want to really think about what are those key metrics that will describe the action of getting from point A to point B in the goal space you're looking for. Then you want to look at composite indicators. And the reason why I put it takes a village is because sometimes these KPIs involve multiple departments. They may involve multiple teams. So you want to look at all the components that make up that intended result, because everybody has to pull his weight. Everybody has to be able to step up and perform relative to the goal. And also, most importantly, agree to the parameters that you've set in order to achieve those results. After we've done that, then we're looking at, thresholds, targets, weights, importance and frequency of making sure that those goals are measured. So a lot of times, for example, in our sequences, when we're talking about generating conversation, we weight the way that the prospect engages with us. If they open an email file, that has a certain weight to it. If they click through, that's a little bit showing more engagement. So we want to make sure that that has a higher importance and a higher weight. And if they respond to the email, then that should be the highest weight of all. So those are the kinds of things I'm talking about when we're actually creating these KPIs. We create the importance and the heaviness, the value that we place on these KPIs so that we can essentially encapsulate everything into a graph. So we can visually see where we are, what we need to work on, where the gaps are, where we're falling into an abyss in some cases, and then also how to pull ourselves back up to make sure that we're doing the right types of work at the right time to get the results that we're looking for. We can build this then into a reporting system that, initially for SDR world, I like to look at things daily, and we may move to a weekly once we start getting into a good team rhythm. But we want to have these results on demand and also via some type of frequency, time-based reporting like weekly, monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, that kind of thing. With trends, we want to know what happened this year versus last year so that we can start doing some predictive analysis. And we want to measure and analyze. So we want to look at it and then start using our process of continuous improvement in order to be able to eke out those additional percent conversion so that we're getting better and better as we go along. Baby steps, but still we want to be able to take the data and then apply specificity around a predictable number that we can increase by and then start shooting for those new goals. So here's an example of visually how to measure accountability. And again, you'll see those same KPIs of activities that are actionable in nature, objectives, insights, and trends. And then typically we look at accountability by role, by score, by importance, and then finally by duration. So whatever tool you're using to help you track accountability, should really have this capability built into it natively. And then we can take it further and look at it by individual, by team, by region, and then, of course, over the entire enterprise. Principle number 3 is recognition. Now, this is where a lot of people get this kind of backwards or wrong or forget. There's 2 really parts of recognition. There's the extrinsic side, which we kind of all know about and we talk about a lot, which is commissions, bonuses, awards, leveling up, which means, basically if I'm starting as a junior SDR, I'm working my way up to senior SDR or lead. So that's what I mean by level up. But there are also intrinsic recognition. And we as humans still have this very strong desire to be respected, to feel appreciated, to have meaningful work to come into every day, and then to really work towards an important vision. Now, initially our vision may be I want to buy a house or I want to make my mortgage or whatever. But eventually, there are other things that creep in. And so you want to make sure that you're working with a company who's culturally a good fit for you. I mean, I know for me, I get up every morning just wanting to help people. I mean, I feel like I'm giving back now. I'm in that mode. So I want to be able to help thousands of people be able to start conversations with people they don't know. So that's more intrinsic. It's not about, the level of income I make. It's more about, for me now at this age, about getting up and being able to add value. So those are the types of intrinsic recognition that I'm looking for, is when people write to me and thank me for their help, for my help.
This is all great, Mary Lou. I'll just jump in. I think that's going towards the topic of the progress principle, which is one of the things we've seen is that actually, if you want to keep people, the number one motivator of reps, that's in any industry, but especially in sales, is sense of progress, and it's actually more motivating than recognition or pay. So if you can help, giving them a sort of sense of progress into how they're doing and how they're moving along, that's actually the number one way to drive them and to keep them feeling motivated and recognized.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, I think that a lot of times in many of the articles that I've written on recognition, they talk a lot about extrinsic, because we can get our hands around that. It's quantitative, it's tangible. But in reality, the combination of the 2 is what we're really trying to achieve. So here's some examples of the extrinsic as we talked about, leveling up. And these actually are really good. So if you're a manager listening to this and you're wondering how to reward there's a natural progression here. So if it's important to them to feel like they are essentially moving up in the organization, if that's important to them, this is a nice way for them to stay in the SDR role. If that's, basically where they're, from a tenured basis where they are. But from an achievement basis, you can actually use these different levels. Assistant SDR maybe does the researching and mapping calls, maybe getting their feet wet on having the conversations and being able to navigate through the organization. Whereas an associate SDR may be someone who sets appointments. And as they start getting more achievements under their belt and they're sounding good on the phone, and you're actually, when you're doing your phone listening and they're sounding like they are be able to hold themselves in a conversation with a peer, a colleague, if they're talking to CEOs, they sound like a CEO, for example, then they may move up to senior SDR. And those folks set qualified opportunities. Now, I came in few years ago working for a client as, believe it or not, an associate SDR, because it was in an industry where I wasn't quite sure what to say yet on the phone. I could set appointments though pretty easily, but I wasn't comfortable with, actually walking them through a qualification process. Only with time and getting that comfort level did I say, hey, I'm ready now, I think, to do the qualified opportunities. And sure enough, once I got in there, it was really tough at first, but I got to the point where I was setting the recommended amount and actually above that for the AEs that I worked for. So it was a good way for them to say, okay, you're ready now. You're ready to take on this role. Do you feel that way as well? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So it felt good. The other thing that I like is the second one here, which is if you're trying to figure out how to reward consistency. A lot of times with clients, we work on these bonus programs, and you'll notice that in this particular example I'm showing you, it's all about consistency. So they get a bonus if they have a silver bonus, which it could be something like, I worked for a company once where we got beer cards where you could go to any brewery in town and get a free beer for a month with this card you had. So, that was 2 consecutive months of essentially meeting whatever objectives you set for them. If it was opportunities, they got this, consecutively the number of opportunities. There were no peaks and valleys. It was a level. A gold bonus was 3 consecutive months of the same, and a platinum was 4. And, they don't have to be a high monetary value. It's the recognition and the reward that I think is where people just are very like cloud nine, very happy. And we want consistency in the SDR role. The worst thing that can happen to us is that we have this peak and valley thing we have to deal with. So if we can get consistency amongst the SDRs where they're producing the level that we need each month without fail, just think of our stress levels as a manager. So these are the kinds of extrinsic rewards. Now, intrinsically, all you have to think about, and I put micro recognition because I want you to think, baby steps of rewards. But the intrinsic stuff is all about the workflow. It's all about the day in the life. So here's some examples of rewards that I've seen given out to reps. Email writing, who has the highest response of the hyper-personalized templates over and over, or maybe it's that month, 2 month, 3 month thing. That should be rewarded because that is going to have that person want to take on more of the email writing for the team. And if they can produce response templates that get you where you need to go to have those meaningful conversations, reward that. Same thing with open rates, which would be subject line experts. There may be some people on the team, that's what they're great at, is getting those emotional triggers on the subject line so that people will, move their eyeballs into the email content. Same thing for click-through. So that is actually, you're now in the body of the email and they're writing content that not only triggers, but it challenges them and it gives them a reason why to click through. So you want to reward this in your team, especially if you're a manager that's going to be responsible for writing your own hyper-personalized emails, which a lot of sales teams are doing. Another example here is block time. And this is a big one for me, as you've heard me on my soapbox for the last 3 webinars about the importance of block time. And so, who on the team has the most meaningful conversations within a 2-hour block consistently? That means that person, for that persona that they're calling on, has figured out the best time to call. That should be rewarded. That should be applauded. That should be socialized amongst the team, because then the other folks are going to say, well, I'm going to try to find the best time to call block for whoever I'm calling on. The other one that I like is the ratio of meaningful conversations to connects. So in other words, if they're in that 2-hour block time, they got, 10 connects, they were able to convert 8 into meaningful conversations. And a meaningful conversation, remember from the last webinar, is all about moving down the pipeline. So if you're on a freeway, this is how I explain it. A meaningful conversation is on a freeway would move you to the next mile marker on the freeway, or it will move you exit out of the freeway. If you stay at the same mile marker, meaning you haven't learned anything new, that is not a meaningful conversation. That's a just checking in kind of call, which we don't want the reps to do. So if you have reps that do those meaningful conversations more consistently, that's a great way to reward them intrinsically, because it's basically letting them know that what they're doing with their workday is valuable, is meaningful, and that they have a leadership position now to teach others how they got to that point and how their peer can do the same. And the last one here is just, the fastest conversations to SQL. So this is all about who is doing those conversations and having those sales conversations that get from initial conversation to qualified op the fastest with the most authenticity, and that they don't fall out as they move through the pipeline. So that's another area that I like to see. Now you'll notice that I have these little things in parentheses, and those are basically metrics that we use to track predictable revenue. The formula on page 42 of predictable revenue is listed on here. Not completely, but enough of it so that you can see that if we're rewarding this, that we're going to reduce that equation so that we have more opportunities going to close, which allows us to forecast more reliably. So again, here we go with a way to look at recognition. And it's great to, I think, Jeremy, you can speak to this because you guys have this display that goes up and, it's just pretty amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Mary Lou, I love this slide right here. So this to explain to people how this applies with ambition. One way we do it to where people don't have to, or managers rather, don't have to go looking for or doing all this extra work to do recognition. They set up slides for certain daily activities, like let's say it's 100 phone calls a day, or closing 5 deals, or staying 3 meetings, whatever it may be. And basically, it's a way for people to get recognition on Ambition TV, to have YouTube clips playing on Ambition TV the second they hit a goal or a benchmark. So yes, that's one way that our managers do it, and it's all about, like Mary Lou said, it's real time, public, and personalized recognition. That's all data driven. So if you have Salesforce and you're using Ambition, you can basically set up to where, okay, whoever the first person to have 100 calls logged into Salesforce today, we're going to have a TV announcement so the whole office knows this person just hit this benchmark. And it could be any benchmark, it could be anything. It could be like Mary Lou said, you've hit a certain benchmark 3 months in a row or 4 months in a row, stuff like that. So it can be public, or it can be sent directly to the manager, and the manager can do a one-on-one special sort of email or a special recognition section. So yeah, sorry, my voice is a little bit hoarse right now. I'm a little bit under the weather here, but I had to jump in here. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as Jeremy pointed out, he mentioned a couple things that I want to make sure that you heard. One was you can set it public, which is a wonderful way to get the team, excited about the work that they're doing. And again, this vision, this value that they're creating for the company will really resonate. And you can also do it individually, because individually is also a good time to take your person aside and congratulate them, and also do a little training of how they can now improve even what they're doing now. So they get the one-on-one time with their manager. They're getting a recognition, and they're getting a little mini training, one-on-one consulting, mentoring, whatever you want to call it. That'll help them now if they've consistently met these goals. Let's look at what other goals that you want. Let's look at some stretch goals. So you're constantly managing them up and getting them to the point where they're just these sponges of wanting to perform and knowing that it's fun and getting recognized for it. And if it feels good, feels really good.
It's all about, as Dallas Hoganson, he's the head commercial sales for Lyft. He calls it just real-time feedback loops. You're creating a real-time feedback loop that's positive and that is generating, the feedback that you're looking for on your team. So yeah, that's exactly it. Exactly it, Mary Lou.
Yeah. So the fourth principle of our 5 principles is motivation. And it's funny because sometimes recognition and motivation kind of go hand in hand. And in fact, we have the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation as well. But as we said before, motivation for some people is is more than money. Money's good. Money's important. We want to make and meet our needs for roof over our heads, to be able to do some fun things, to pay all of our bills, put a little away for retirement. I have to say that because my husband's a portfolio guy, a retirement specialist. So put away your money for retirement. But I think that besides money, there's being valued, feeling that sense that you're a valued asset to the team, being respected, feeling that success, and then being actively involved and engaged. Money does mark our success. It basically it's a measurement for us. We're in sales. So because we're in sales, I say this to people all the time, it's not that money is important, but it is the measurement of our success. Because the more that revenue that we bring in, the more successful we are seen as. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, because we are all about money in terms of the work that we do. We're bringing in revenue for company. That is our job, is to be able to bring in that revenue. But it's not everything for us. So once again, there are extrinsic and intrinsic rewards in terms of motivation. So extrinsically, it's money, it's praise. Anything that's tangible or concrete is considered an extrinsic motivator. Now, intrinsically, though, it's all about the enjoyment that we feel, the positive feelings, and happiness. I think everyone either knows somebody or knows of somebody who just dreads going to work every day. It's just, you can feel the weight on your body when you're getting up in the morning because you just don't want to go. That's not good for our health, and it's not good for us. And what we really want is that feeling of jumping out of bed, can't wait to get to work, to either get our work done, see our friends, whatever it is, talk to our prospects. But that's really what we're looking for. Now, luckily, especially this software with Ambition, gamification is really that link between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. If it's done correctly, we're actually using gamification. If it's done correctly, we are targeting 4 of the intrinsically motivated behaviors. Besides the badges and the things you get when you meet your goals, this is all about these 4 things: relatedness, the social status, the connections that we get, the belonging. There's a sense of autonomy. We have our own creativity, our choices, we have freedom, and we have responsibilities. Mastery, we're learning as we go along. There's personal development. There's different levels of mastery. So all of these are involved in a gamification that has these links in external and internal. And then, of course, the purpose, our meaning, the reason why, why we're doing what we're doing. There's a bigger vision here. So this is a sample of an actual screenshot from Ambition's gamification. And you can see it's got the fun stuff. You can call yourself a team, name your team. But it's really looking at, how you're doing relative to goal and how your team is working together relative to the other team. So I think, there was a quote on the website that said that sustainable gamification really works. And that was the Harvard Business Review.
Yep, that's right, Mary Lou. That's from the HBR did a case study on us that found we had they called it teamification, not so much gamification, but they found that we drove 4 different KPIs at a Fortune 100 or Fortune 1000 company, Berkshire Hathaway and Clayton Homes, over the course of I think 6 months. So yeah, that's great. Well, I love that you have a screenshot in here.
Yeah. So, I think that, this wasn't available when I was in sales way back when. We had different types of contests and things, but the way this is done now is just, it really hits those those values, I think, that we're looking for, because work is not just work, not just showing up. It's about, am I adding value? Am I going to change somebody's life today? And I think that these types of tools allow us to feel good about the fact that, yes, we're doing all of that. So essentially, motivation through empowerment is another, besides gamification. And this is more of what I was used to when I coming up through the ranks. Essentially, we get involved. We are able to contribute to whatever meetings, office hours, training, procedures. We have a voice. And I've always worked for managers who have given us procedures, objectives, policy and planning, information sharing, and pricing. Even pricing, down to pricing. In some cases, we were given a range, but we were able to communicate that to the prospect on the phone if it meant that we could get them further into the pipeline. So that's very empowering to know that I am writing my own job description. I am setting up how I want, Mary Lou Tyler LLC within a company to run, kind of thing. So it's I put down at the bottom there that, we're essentially mini CEOs of our own company, even though we're working for a company. If done right, we feel that we're contributing to the success of that company because we are defining our own plan. Now, it's within the guidelines and within the objectives of the team, but we have a strong voice. And when you have that and feel that strong voice, that is just empowering for you. A lot of companies are really starting to see the value of allowing the teams and the sales folks and the employees or contractors, whatever you are, to be involved in these decisions, because it's no longer command and control. And if it is command and control, it's not going to be something that's going to be long-term. I mean, in the olden days, they had a lot of managers that, it's my way or the highway kind of thing. But I think now they're seeing, if you're a smart company, you're seeing the value of getting the team to contribute to the overall plan. The last principle is development. And I think this is another area where I already got on my soapbox with all of you guys. So simply, it is the best thing you can do for yourself. And it's the best thing, if you're a manager, that you can do for your team. Develop the skills. These skills that I wrote here, I think, are vital for a successful SDR organization, starting with the telephone. Now, I know some of you are thinking, okay, geez, I don't really do all this. And I want you to think about incorporating these in at some point in your life with your team. We want to be able to hear how SDRs handle objections. We want to hear them on the phone. We want to listen. And when I ran the call center of those 250 agents, I would run around with the headset on and I would plug in to the SDR's telephone. I know you probably can't do that easily now. And listen, and just listen to the actual sales conversation. Immediately after they hung up with call wrap-up, we would have a training session. That is when you're going to hit them with, here's how great you did. Here's some things that I think you can improve. Where do you want me to help you? When do you want to get back together for a role-playing session? So objections are really important, because the smoother that the SDRs are on the phone, the better they're going to be able to convert prospects to qualified opportunities. The better they are at asking questions, the better they are at figuring out how those questions translate into sense of urgency, and then follow that up with a next action step that the prospect should take. That should be very rhythmic in nature. And if I were to wake each and every one of your SDRs up at 3 a.m. and run them through this exercise, they should be able to do it. So, that kind of skills development is ongoing. It's not a set it and forget it. So managers, if you're listening, please consider at least once or twice a week tapping into the phone conversations that your reps are having. And you want to look at objection handling. You want to look at the actual sales conversations themselves, meaning what questions they ask. You want to look at how they, or listen to how they're handling the disqualification. Some of you call it qualification. I call it disqualification because make the opportunities, or however many you do a month. We basically want to be able to do that. The other thing is the call flow. We want to look at how the call is flowing. Is it flowing in a way that we think is going to reduce the lag in the pipeline? And then are they suggesting next steps? What is that rhythm? Bringing up the objection, handling the objection, putting some implication in there to the sense of urgency, and then following it up with a recommended next step. That's the phone. So really, get on the phone, listen to your folks. Even if they tape their side of the conversation and you listen to that, that's better than nothing at all. But you have to, in an SDR organization, listen to your reps on the phone, period, end of discussion. Writing is the second area, especially if you're having your reps do writing for these hyper-personalized templates. If you're having them respond to emails one-off, if they're doing any type of research, you want to be able to see their work product for that. Because the research is what they're going to use in their phone conversation. The research is what they're going to use in their email writing. So you want to make sure that they are researching and pulling out those nuggets, those key indicators that map to your pain points and what problems you solve, so that they have a good conversation foundation in order to be able to, when they get someone on the phone, move them from state to state to state of this unaware to aware to interested to evaluating. So the research pieces, I would once again make it, a little rule that you're going to look once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, but consistently at how they're doing the research and helping them do it better and faster with more specificity around pain points. The last area for developing skill is improvement, continuous improvement through the process of role play. For those of you who are not sure they can get role play in, I have a friend, and I think Jeremy knows him, from Outreach, Mark Kozoglo. Yeah, he does 10, I think, to 15 minutes of role play before every 2-hour block of his. Is that correct? Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yes. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. So what that means is the role play is time. The beauty of Mark's process is that this is warming up the SDR so that when they do get on the phones, they're already warmed up and ready to go. So I like what he came up with, and I think it's brilliant. And I think I said that before in an earlier webinar. But that's something that if you're role playing, if you're doing block times with folks, which you should be, then you can incorporate a role play session, whether it's twice a week to start. When I'm ramping up new SDRs, we do daily role plays. But then work on a rhythm that works for you and your team. But I think that's a good place to start putting in these objection handling, the sales conversations. And I actually have a role play schedule that I could incorporate and send with this last webinar if you want to look to see what I do with clients. Another area that I haven't seen too much of is the goal setting. And that's really a one-on-one and then a team exercise so that you get an understanding of what each of your folks would like to do and where you think they should be going. And you can plug those numbers into the Ambition software to actually see how they're doing relative to goal. So that's a nice thing to set with your folks on a periodic basis, to check in with them to see how they are relative to goal, and also if it's time to set some new stretch goals. Problem solving and product knowledge are also areas that I'm sure there's a lot of product knowledge going on, but maybe not problem solving, which is this whole implication section of getting, the SDR to understand at a deep level why the prospect is wrong is essentially what they have to understand. But point out why they are wrong, but do it in a way that gets them to say, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or wow, I didn't realize, this is something that's important that we've got to get on. So those are the kinds of things that I think under this simplicity and consistency rule are the 3 areas for the SDRs where you can develop skill. And this is another way to develop skill, is to look at your funnel and then pull out from your funnel those areas where you think the SDRs are getting stuck. I call it gunk in the pipeline. For predictable revenue, the first place people were getting stuck were in the sell the dream portion of the framework, for those of you who are familiar with that. And that is actually having that conversation of why change, why now, why us. So if you look at your funnel and you look at the conversion rates, or just your gut feel as to where the reps are having challenges, those are the areas of skills that you should put into your role playing. So, grab out your funnel or your map or whatever it is that you're using right now for the sales stages, top of funnel, and mark in those areas where you think, boy, if we can just improve by 5, 10, 15% here, that's going to allow us to get down to the SALs, the sales accepted leads, faster. Those are the areas that you can put into the skills development section of this framework. Now, these last few slides, I've sort of given you some ideas via themes, and then the types of activities. And we did this on another webinar, of just giving you some ideas of where you can start plugging in development themes and activities for your teams. So let's just take a look at these pretty briefly. And if Jeremy, if you want to add anything, just chime in. But under the theme of give and get respect, then the activities would be collaboration, communication activities, shared vision, expressing gratitude. To engage the team, we talked about that a little bit before. It's getting them involved in the planning, the procedures, the policies, any goals and objectives as a unit, as a team, and where they are, where they want to be, and how they're going to get there, kind of thing together.
Yeah, and I would just add to this clarity on goals, clarity about everything, benchmarks, expectations, progress, and then transparency, visibility, and accountability, like you said. And that's going to inherently enhance, I think, a collaborative spirit, as you said, and group communication and recognition, everything. Because once everything's out in the open, it's much easier to understand where you are and how you can help and how you can do better and all that sort of stuff.
Perfect. The other thing that down here, it's asking questions, and this is hand in hand. Ask and then listen. Don't just ask for the sake of asking, but really listen and show the rep that you're listening, or if you're rep to rep, peer to peer, show that other person the courtesy of you're listening to them by, maintaining that eye contact if you're face to face, or just shutting up if you're on the phone. Don't try to talk over them. But basically, you want to understand, what is success? How do they define success? What is it that motivates them? What is it that you can do to help enhance their life on your team, as a member of your team, or, basically in general, so that they come to work happy and they're willing to and wanting to achieve. Here's some more themes on, the winning SDR teams. I like this one. I call it Limitless Selling Strategies. I actually borrowed that from a colleague of mine, Max Cates, who wrote a book that everyone should read on sales management. And I'll put the name of the book inside of the actual, I'll give it to Jeremy so he has it. I don't have it at the top of my head right now, but he calls it Limitless Selling Strategies, and it's really challenging, always challenging those goals. Try to just eke out a little bit higher percentage every time if you can, and encouraging the achievement. And we can encourage achievement by what we talked about before with the reward systems, the intrinsic, the extrinsic, the little bonuses here and there, of getting people to really focus on, gee, if I'm so close. Let me get there. I got to get there. I got to achieve this goal. The other thing is to make them all workable, which means you're going to have to track them. You're going to have to measure. You're going to have to train your folks and constantly develop and improve their skills. And then also set expectations that if you are going after a stretch goal, that means that there's probably going to be a little bit more time at the office than they're used to. But if they all agree to it, then that's great. Just go towards that goal. But it's not going to be the 4-hour work week. So those kinds of things are important for teams to know, that if they do go after those stretch goals, that does mean more time or more quality coming out. Really looking at energizing people, making sure that they are practicing learned optimism, I guess. And there's a book about it by Martin Seligman called Learned Optimism, of how to turn that pessimistic attitude into more of an optimistic attitude, which is what we need at top of funnel, because we're constantly getting rejection at the top of funnel. So I think we have to have more of a sunny disposition going in to begin with. Some other themes are training strategies. We talked a little bit about this, the one-on-one, when to use it, when it's important, especially if you're doing listening on the phone. Right after they hang up and they're wrapping up is when you want to get in there and get some training into them, so it's fresh in their mind. I know that, we as reps, when asked a question about, well, what happened last week, or what was tell us the good, the bad, the ugly, we're going to remember probably the last conversation, and that sort of frames our entire week. Whereas if you're doing this dynamically, one-on-one, after the call, you're right there in the moment. So that's really why you want to look at these different strategies. Mentoring, have one of the SDRs teach a topic that week, so that will get people. If you assign me a topic, and I don't really know a lot about the topic, I'm going to go research and figure it out so that I can present it to the rest of the team. So that's another way to just assign for the role-playing section of the block time, is a topic that someone can talk about. Give a demonstration, hold a conversation, whatever it is. Critique my call is another one where we listen as a team to a call and we give critique in love and being very supportive, but it's going to help us get better. And then, of course, this whole concept of call wrap up, which I don't see very often with my clients. So I get them moving on call wrap up right away, which is the ability to wrap up a call so that it's meaningful in nature. And if you learn anything new, whether it's new language that you heard coming out of your prospect, or if you went in with pain point A and they ended up discussing pain point B, you want to be able to wrap that up in the call, because that's going to help marketing. That's going to help us organize our sequences of emails in the order in which we can introduce pain, solve pain, and get them moving into the pipeline faster. The next thing is assessments. So we really want to look at the ability to assess as much as possible on a daily, on-demand, whether it's sales process, total quality management, whatever it is that you're looking. Start thinking of assessing and using that process to continually improve. So where you can learn more from me is Predictable Prospecting, which is a book that was released in August 2016. And it's kind of second generation of predictable revenue. It really dives deeply into how to maximize and increase the pipeline for B2B sales, top of funnel. And that's it. That's it for me, Jeremy. Thank you so much for your time.
This has been great. And thanks so much, Mary.